Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. Hey there, and welcome to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more and find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. Before I get started today, just wanted to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. There's no doubt that my dad, who passed away in 1987 and knew nothing about podcasts, obviously, had a huge influence on this podcast and my desire to start it. My dad taught me how to play baseball, football, basketball, golf. He took me to ball games to give me a chance to see my sports heroes up close, and we talked about how sports were when he was a kid. A lot of those memories translate into the stories that I talk about on this podcast. So enjoy your day, dads. And now let's dive into some sports history. It's June 16th, and on this day in 1983, it was a boxing scandal that ruined the lives of two fighters. This was an undercard fight to the Roberto Duran-Davey Moore fight held at Madison Square Garden. The two boxers involved were Billy Ray Collins and Luis Resto. Collins was a young fighter from Tennessee, and he carried a 14-0 record into the ring on this night. This was his first trip to Madison Square Garden and his first fight on a major stage. Collins was the favorite to win the fight. In the other corner, Resto was a solid fighter, nothing special though at 20 wins and 8 losses. He was a good challenger for the Tennessee kid. Now, folks like promoter Bob Arum had high hopes for Collins and thought that the Tennessee kid had a future in the ring, and it was a bright one. Working in Resto's corner that night was Panama Lewis, a well-respected trainer that everybody knew. Unknown to Collins at the time, Resto stepped into the ring with an ounce of padding removed from each glove, obviously making them harder, and then his hands inside those gloves were wrapped in hardened plaster. As one journalist put it when it became known later on, it was as if Resto walked into the fight with a loaded gun. What had been expected to be a quality fight turned into an act of brutality in the ring. As the fight progressed, the fighters traded punches, but by the 10th round, the swelling around Collins' eyes was pronounced. His eyes were puffy and shot. His cheeks were unusually swollen. There was swelling on his forehead. Collins stood in, trying to hit what he couldn't see clearly. Resto kept pounding. He stayed close to Collins, delivering body blows and as many shots to the head as he could. Finally, the bell rung at the end of the 10th, ending the fight. When the result was announced, Resto had won a unanimous decision. As Resto went to Collins' corner to wish them well in the future, Collins' dad, Billy Sr., who had been working in his son's corner that night, noticed Resto's gloves were missing padding, and he immediately called for the commissioner to come take a look. When it was discovered that Resto had doctored his gloves and added plaster to his wrapped hands, well, he was immediately disqualified, and then Resto and his trainer Panama Lewis were both suspended indefinitely. But that was just the beginning. After being checked out by several doctors, Billy Ray was told that he would never be able to box again due to the severe eye damage that he suffered during the fight. The damage had been exponentially made worse by the doctored gloves and his plaster-covered hands. At that point, Collins began to spiral downward. Boxing had been his life, it had been his future. So, suffering from depression, he turned to alcohol. Less than a year after this fight, Collins crashed his car into a creek near his home after a night of drinking, and he was killed. Many of Collins' family and friends blamed Resto and Lewis for his death. Resto was later found guilty to what was classified as an illegal 10-round assault, and he was sentenced to 3 years in jail. He was never allowed to box again. Lewis was sentenced to 6 years and maintained up to his death in 2020 that he did not doctor the gloves and had no knowledge that they had been tampered with. On this day in 1970, Chicago Bears running back Brian Piccolo died after his battle with cancer. Piccolo had led the country in rushing and scoring as a senior at Wake Forest in 1964, besting his future teammate and two-time All-American Gale Sayers. Despite that, he went undrafted and was subsequently signed as a free agent by the Bears, a team that desperately needed a ground game after finishing last in the league in that category the season prior. After a year on the practice squad, Piccolo got his chance, and over the next 3 years rushed for 927 yards, had 540 yards receiving, and he scored 4 touchdowns. Over that time, he developed a deep friendship with Sayers. At a time when racial tensions were high and the civil rights movement was in full swing, Piccolo and Sayers became the first white and black teammates to room together on the road. On November 16, 1969, the Bears were playing Atlanta. After scoring a touchdown in the fourth quarter, Piccolo felt a strange pain in his chest. He had been coughing for several weeks, and he hadn't felt great. He took himself out of the game, and 2 days later, a chest x-ray revealed a tumor in his lung. 12 days after that, surgery was performed to remove the tumor, but afterward, the doctor let him know that the cancer had spread. He started chemo a month later. His left lung was removed in April, but none of the procedures and treatments slowed the cancer. When he was readmitted to the hospital in early June, the cancer had spread to other organs. When he died on this day in 1970, Piccolo was 26 years old. The movie Brian Song, starring Billy D. Williams as Sayers and James Caan as Piccolo, was released in 1971. And here on the final day of the U.S. Open, let's go back to 1985, when it was great to be T.C. Chen, until it wasn't. It was the U.S. Open at Oakland Hills in Michigan. Chen had a historic start to the Open, firing an opening day 65 to set a new course record. He made the first double eagle in U.S. Open history, and he set a new 36-hole record and 54-hole record. But then, catastrophe struck on this day. Leading by 4 shots over Andy North, Chen found himself in deep rough just off the 5th green. His chip caused the ball to pop up, and then he struck it again in the air with his wedge. By the rules of golf, that's illegal. Chen was assessed a 1-shot penalty. He then 3-putted for a quad 8. Chen's game went off the rails after that. He bogeyed the next 3 holes. Despite 4 bogeys of his own on the back 9, Andy North was able to win by a shot over Chen and 3 other golfers. It was North's second U.S. Open win. Chen never contended in a major again. And in 1989, it was a mathematical anomaly, nearly impossible to fathom. But it actually happened. At the U.S. Open played that year at Oak Hills Country Club in Pittsford, New York, 4 different golfers aced the same hole in the same round. It was the 167-yard par 3 6th hole. Taking advantage of the wet conditions that day, Jerry Pate, Nick Price, Mark Wiebe, and Doug Weaver all hit a 7-iron past the flag and then sucked it back into the cup. What are the odds? Well, since you asked, it is estimated that the odds of 4 golfers hitting a hole-in-one on the same hole out of a field of 156 is about 1.89 quadrillion to 1. That is likely a feat never to be matched again. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? Are you feeling anxious? Well, the next time you are, eat a pickle. Consuming fermented foods is said to lower anxiety. That's all for today. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. And a reminder, This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.